What's up, Stitches? My name is Smikle and welcome to or back to my channel. Especially welcome to my first ever SmikleGoesKnitting Podcast. I've been watching a lot of podcasts recently and it's inspired me to make my own one. So this first podcast is going to be an introduction to me, a kind of meet the maker, origin story, what I'm working on, chatty kind of thing. So sit down, grab a nice drink and let's get into it. So I thought I'd start off by telling you my knitting origin story, how I first learned to knit. So when I was about 13 years old, I had a great aunt who lived on her own and she sadly passed away. However, she had the largest collection of yarn and different crafty things I've ever seen. And obviously we were her last family, so we inherited everything. My dad wanted to get rid of all the knitting stuff, which broke my 13-year-old heart. I don't know why, but I promised that I would learn to knit by the end of the week, and if I didn't learn to knit by the end of the week, then my dad will be allowed to take the knitting to the charity shop. So I wasn't actually allowed to use any of the stuff. That was a caveat. I think my dad just said that because he wanted me to give up because it was too difficult. So I went to WikiHow and I used YouTube videos and I tried to understand what I needed to do and what I needed to learn to knit. And in doing that I realised I need 2 knitting needles, but I didn't have knitting needles. I need some yarn, but I didn't have any yarn. So I went into my dad's toolkit and I found 2 Phillips head screwdrivers that were sort of the same size, not quite, and I found some string in the tool area of our cellar where my dad keeps all his stuff. And my dad worked nights at the time, so while he was asleep during the day, I sat at the computer with WikiHow and I wish I still had it, but I knit the most grotesque thing I've ever knit from these screwdrivers and this twine that I'd found. So my dad was impressed. I went to wake him up and he was impressed that I'd pursued and persisted in doing what I wanted to do, but you could see the dread in his face when he realised that all of the knitting stuff and all of the crafty stuff now had to stay, so I had to find somewhere for it. Now, I'm not joking when I said my auntie had a lot of yarn. Like, she had huge bin bags full of yarn, and I think some of it's still in my parents' attic that they don't know about. I am the only one who really goes up there, and I'm pretty sure there's a load of yarn up there, but I also stored some down in my parents' cellar. And recently they went through the cellar to clear it out a little bit and we found a massive bag of yarn, so I thought I'd show that to you guys because it's quite exciting. It's all at least 10 years old and it's all acrylic bar 2 skeins, but I'll show you guys now. So in this bag there's a lot of wool. I mean, it's a big old bag. So I'm going to show you guys first the one that I'm not quite sure about. So this is just a big skein of yarn that needs caking. It says mixed fibres from Jollies made in England. So I imagine this was bought from like a wholesaler or someone who has sheep and they turned it into their yarn. I don't know. I haven't googled Jollies, but I will do that before I work with this. It feels quite scratchy, so I don't know what I'm going to make with this. But I think it's a really nice colour and it could make a very nice thing. I don't know how to treat yarn that's a bit scratchy to make it less scratchy. If anyone has any suggestions on how to make this more wearable, I would love that because it's such a nice colour. It would make such a nice cardigan. And then moving on, we have another one, same mixed fibres from Jollies. This one's not as scratchy as the other one, which is promising. This is quite a nice neutral colour that I would probably use in a jumper of sorts. And then we have a lot of random old bags of 20-gram balls of yarn. This one's the shade Rust. Okay. So MFR date, I don't know what that means, but 1178. So could this be November 1978? Oh god, if it is, then it's a lot older than I thought. Maybe it's like manufacturing date November 78. So yeah, my great aunt, she held on to a lot of things. She had a lot of stuff, so it would not surprise me. The brand is Keynote. Yeah, so there's loads of these in different colours. We've got some browns, we've got rust, we have like a nice pink. It looks less pink in this light, but it's like a soft, like lilac-y pink kind of colour. More brown, a lot of brown. And then some, they're all acrylic. I forgot to mention the Keynote is all acrylic. And then there's just some random, when I was going through them, I kind of bagged up the loose skeins that weren't in any packaging. And it was really sweet. My sister's puppy, I say puppy, he's like 2 years old and he's a Malamute cross German Shepherd. So he's the same height as me, but I still call him a puppy because he acts like a puppy. As I was taking each ball out of the bag to kind of like categorize it and put it into their separate smaller bags, he felt the need to quality check all of it. So he would walk over to me, sniff the ball of yarn I had in my hand, and then once he was satisfied that it wasn't going to cause me any harm, he would like sit down and like curl up and go to sleep. And so I'd get another ball out, he'd like stick his nose up, sniff the ball of yarn, and then like rest back to sleep. And he did that every single time, to the point where I'd take a ball out of the bag, hold it to his nose, he'd sniff it, and then give like a huff of approval, and then I would put it in the bag, which I think is an adorable story. Yeah, there's also some Aran yarn, 25% wool. I wonder if any of them have dates on it. Lot number 10,566. I don't know if that means anything. The brand is Wendy. Cool tumble dry. Let's see. Nice colour anyway. Really nice colour. Again, it's a little bit scratchy, but to be expected when it's been sat around doing nothing for at least 10 years. Also, my great aunt had a lot of embroidery stuff. Just a lot of embroidery thread, and I haven't done much embroidery. I think when I first got all the stuff, I was so fascinated by knitting that I didn't actually care too much about the embroidery thread, but now that I have a good understanding of knitting and I've been looking out into other crafts, I definitely will be keeping this embroidery thread and start maybe embroidering things. Who knows? So that's basically what I had in that bag. There's just a load more of different colours of the exact same brand, same size skeins. These are, they're a bit softer than some of the others. Quite nice. Maybe I'll make socks out of them. They are DK weight, but I'm sure I can find like a DK pattern for socks. If anyone has a DK pattern for socks, let me know. So yeah, that's everything that my great aunt had. She had so much more, and over the years I've knit with all of it, and I thought previously, 2 years ago, I knit a lot of things for my family's Christmas presents, and I thought I'd got through all of her yarn. So it was quite a nice surprise when my parents messaged me saying, hey, we've got a bag of yarn, do you want it? Absolutely. They also found an old knitting machine that my great aunt had, and I don't have that with me because I don't have anywhere to store it at the moment, but that's definitely something I'm going to be using as well in the future. Kind of unrelated to knitting, but also in that bag my parents found this little mug, and that's me as a baby. So I've now got a mug with my own self as a baby on, which I think is pretty cool, and you'll be seeing this in future videos. So as I mentioned, I learnt when I was 13 to knit initially, and I wasn't amazing at it. I think the most I made was like a scarf for a teddy bear, and I made these stockinette stripy bracelets and just like little patches. I didn't really have any direction with my knitting, but I just wanted to knit, so that was what I did. And then I got to about 14 and realised that when I mentioned to people that I knit, I got like a lot of bullying happen. Like, people made fun of me for the fact that I knit, and that crushed my little 14-year-old soul. So I vowed never to pick up the needles ever again. And so I just stopped knitting and kind of moved all of the knitting stuff that I had away, put it down in the cellar apparently, and just kind of ignored that portion of my life and ignored everything to do with knitting because it wasn't cool. And that was quite sad. So from the ages of probably 14 to when I picked it up again at 19, I didn't really knit. There would be points where I'd secretly like find some knitting needles and like knit a couple of rows to make sure I still had what it takes. Sorry about that, my camera died. So where was I? Yeah, so I didn't really knit from those ages. I kind of shamefully knit on my own to make sure that I still knew what I was doing, but it was, I cared too much what other people think, and I try, now I'm a bit older, you know, 10 years later, I try not to care what other people think. Obviously that's still a difficult feat, but I try not to let it affect me as much anymore. So then we get to the age of 19 when I really struggled with my mental health, and doing a degree in psychology, I kind of understood certain aspects to my mental health, and I'd been to different types of counselling, and I was in a really bad place mentally, and I needed something to change. And so I decided from that point I was going to try and find something that didn't involve sitting on social media and scrolling for hours on end, feeling jealous and upset about myself because I feel less than other people. And so I kind of sat there and ruminated on what skills I thought I had, and I didn't really think I had many skills at all. And it wasn't until my partner was like, hey, you used to knit. I was like, hey, I did, didn't I? And so he encouraged me by finding some yarn that he really liked and then tasking me to knit him a scarf. And it was like something ignited within me. And the moment I started knitting, I think I went to a charity shop to get the needles and some yarn, and I knit a sock, but it wasn't like a knit in the round sock that you would normally knit. It was like I knit it flat and then kind of seamed up the sides. I don't know where that's gone. It wasn't the most attractive of things, but I was hooked and I loved it. It was a lot of fun, and I was working with 4mm needles with DK weight yarn on a scarf for him. And after a while I found, and I still do this today, I got bored with one project. So I would constantly chop and change and go to different projects. I never actually finished the scarf that I started making for him, but I think I undid the project, and then I think I used that yarn, held it double, and made a blanket for my sister with it later on. My partner still got his scarf. It was a lot chunkier, and I used one of those loom things to make it, and he still loves it to this day. So I got the knitting bug. I was hooked on it. I couldn't stop knitting. I wanted to knit all the time, and it was at this point where I really wanted to learn how to knit a bit faster. And previously I'd learnt to knit the way that I believe a lot of people learn to knit, which is knitting English style, where you throw the yarn over with your right hand. And I wanted to knit quicker, so I learnt how to knit continental, and I can't imagine not knitting continental now. Like, it's something that I do all the time. I've tried to knit English, but it just did not go well. And you can see that in my previous videos where I showed you how to knit, do the knit stitch and purl stitch. You can see I can't do it. I can't do it anymore. But knitting was my happy place. It got me into a state of flow where I actually ended up knitting a blanket. And I'll show you guys all of these projects I'm talking about right now in a later podcast. But I knit this blanket, and it was just a garter stitch blanket with patchwork squares that I knit. I think I knit them on 6.5mm needles with Aran yarn. And every time I felt anxious, I would knit. And so we call it my anxiety blanket, but it did the opposite of creating anxiety. It got rid of anxiety. It got me into a state of flow. And I now, to this day, find myself knitting some type of blanket whenever I feel anxious, because that is really cathartic for me, and it's nice to get my mind off things and just focus on something. This was all when I was 19 years old, and I was on my placement year at university working in recruitment, so a very high stress job, so it was nice to have things to work towards in my personal life. I'd moved to a town where I didn't have many friends. I had one couple that we knew in that town, and I'd moved away from everyone else, so I felt pretty alone, and knitting helped me feel a bit better and give me a bit of a purpose in my social life, or my personal life, not my social life. My knitting definitely impacted my social life in the fact that I had none because all I wanted to do was knit. So being a student, I had no money. I was very, very poor. I was very poor. I lived in quite an expensive town when I went back for my final year at university, so I needed to save up as much money as I could. So my parents clocked on to the fact that I was knitting again. And obviously I had all the yarn from my great aunt, so they were very excited to get that out of their house and give it to me. And so after knitting of all of that, I kind of was like, okay, like, let's go find some more wool. And my parents do this thing where when they figure out that I like something and it's not horrendously expensive, they buy anything they see to do with it. So I know Aldi in the UK does big 400-gram balls of Aran weight yarn. And my parents were in Aldi one day, saw all of that, and they were like $3.99 for 400 grams. So they went crazy, and they bought me like 12 balls of yarn of different colours, so that was quite nice. And I actually made this jumper that I'm wearing right now. I'll talk about it later, but I made that with some of the yarn that my parents gifted to me. And from there it's kind of snowballed, and like, I know The Works does different yarns, like small things. My parents, if they go in there, they'll buy like a skein of yarn from there. And for my birthdays I would get huge hauls of different types of yarn, whatever my dad or my sister would find interesting. And then for my birthday this year, I actually got to choose the yarn, and I found Mariners did 400-gram balls of Aran yarn, and in the colour pesto, which is a nice green that I very much like. If you've seen my previous videos, you'll see it in the ripple bralette that I made. That was made from DK. So it was very nice. And yeah, I had a lot of yarn now, and I felt like I needed a knitting purpose. I never really bought patterns. I kind of tried to see what free patterns there were, because like I said, student equals poor. And so I tried to find some free patterns that I really liked, and I struggled. Obviously, if someone makes a really nice pattern of like a garment they're really proud of, they're probably not going to put it up online for free, which I completely understand, and I get it, and like, I'm not mad. Like, at the time I was a bit like, oh, why can't I just do this for free? But it takes a lot. So I completely understand. And so I just made some like basic things, and I tried to start designing things on my own because I thought, okay, if I can't get them for free, I understand knitting. I'll just make a jumper like easily without even knowing what to do. And so I have a couple of jumpers here with me, and they they are hilarious. The first jumper is a jumper that I knit for my partner for Christmas, and it's in a very nice burgundy colour, and it's styled on the jumper that Ron Weasley wore in the first Harry Potter movie. It looks great, and it's it's got a J on it, it's great, but I don't know if you guys can tell how huge it is. Like, look at the shoulders. I got the sizing all wrong. I didn't know how to gauge swatch or anything. I didn't know about blocking. I didn't know any of this, and I didn't even know knitting the round, so when I knit the collar, I attempted to make this ribbing, but ended up doing like the seed stitch because I just didn't understand. So this is the first jumper I made for someone else. Also, you can see where I thought I hadn't made it long enough, and so I unpicked a load of the stitches, but didn't unpick all of the stitches that I should have, and so there's just like a weird lump. It's great, but I appreciate it, and obviously my partner loves it and wears it around Christmas time. So that was the first jumper I made. I have made other jumpers as well that I tried to like design and stuff, but I just didn't like them, so I ended up undoing them. And so there was one that I made with just a garter stitch, and it was like a brown colour, and I don't think I had enough yarn, so I made the sleeves like 3/4, and anyone who knows me knows I hate 3/4 length sleeves, so I don't know why I thought I would enjoy that on a jumper. But I ended up frogging that and making that into multiple other things. And then I had a light blue super chunky yarn I tried to make into a cropped sweater, and I didn't do any neck shaping, and I bound off really tightly on the neck, so wearing it felt like I was being suffocated. So I ended up frogging that, and then I think I gave the yarn to my sister because she wanted to learn to knit, so I gave that to her. So those are a few jumpers, and then I discovered colourwork, which was great, and I was so excited for colourwork because you can make such pretty little designs, and I got a bit obsessed with it, so I started to learn a little bit of colourwork. Obviously after doing that J was a lot of fun, so I ventured out and I started designing. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a bit of a meme queen. I'm a walking, talking, living meme. And so there was a meme that I had a bit of an obsession with for a long time. And I don't know if you guys see it, I'll insert it here.
Somebody touching my spaghetti!
Somebody touching my spaghetti! Let me know how good that impression was. But so I decided I wanted that on a jumper, and I wanted all of it, and I wanted the tagline, I wanted everything. So while I was meant to be doing my dissertation at university, I instead was on Excel creating a colourwork chart to make this. Oh, you thought that was it? Okay. Somebody touching my spaghetti! As you can tell, this one's huge as well. And I didn't have enough of this kind of beige yarn to finish the entire jumper, so that's why I moved on to the pink. It's just the front panel that has the beige on it, everything else is this pink colour. And, oh god. It's... So you guys are probably thinking, oh, it looks like, that's funny, that's cool, just the colours are the things that are wrong. I didn't read the pattern well enough. The pattern, if you guys are wondering, I'll link it down in the comments. It's a free pattern by Karen, and it's like an adult pullover pattern. I'll put it on screen right now, what it's actually called. Free pattern by Karen, very nice. It's also, I created this from that same pattern. Obviously, it looks fine. It's a cropped sweater. It's quite nice, very comfortable. The yarn I used, as I mentioned, isn't the greatest of quality, but I like the colour, so I'm going to keep it that way. But, sorry, I can't stop laughing. This jumper, I didn't read the pattern properly, and I thought, oh, you know, like I've done it a bit wrong, but I'll fix it. I'll just do what I need to do. I've been knitting. I know how to knit. I've known how to knit for so long now that, you know, I can just do these things. So this is the difference in sleeve lengths. This is genuinely, like, I'm not even exaggerating. That one sleeve is this long and one sleeve is this long. So this, and as you can tell, it's very long as well, the jumper. It's like a dress on me. I'm 5'6" for reference, which is the average height for a woman of my age and demographic. My partner is 6'1", and so the shorter sleeve fits me perfectly, and the longer sleeve fits him perfectly. It's like a dress on me, but also a dress on him. So camera cut out again. I would go through and like frog it and undo it and all of that, but I just can't bring myself to. It's so perfectly imperfect, and that's something I try and bring into all of my knitting, is I try and make sure that I don't expect perfection. And this is a consistent reminder that I shouldn't expect perfection. And it's actually, I've shown some people, also the cuff sizes are so different as well. I've shown some people and they want me to make them one. They exactly as this one is made, the exact proportions. So who knows, maybe this is gonna take the country by storm, I don't know. So that's my jumper knitting stories of how I came to start knitting garments. And there's another jumper that I knitted using the same pattern from Karen, and I gave that to a friend of mine. And then there was this one. And I think there's a few more jumpers that I've made, all based on that one pattern. I've modified them slightly. I know I've spoken about a lot of different projects that I've done, and I will have a video where I show you everything, so stay tuned for that. So as you can tell from those two jumpers, evolving into this well-rounded, same length sleeve jumper, is that I continue to improve, and I always strive for continual improvement in my life. And so I graduated from university with a 2-1 in psychology, and I then got myself a job. Bad idea. Job equals money. Money equals can buy knitting patterns and more yarn. So I bought some patterns, and I don't actually think I've knit any of like the initial 3 patterns that I bought, but I was very excited with them. But the moment I bought those 3 patterns, I wanted to buy more, so I did. And then I ended up buying some stuff from Jessie May, which is the Ripple bralette and the Ripple butt shorts. Also bought the My Secret crop, and oh no, the My Secret crop was the free one that she put out in response to the BLM movement. And the Secret crop, the Ripple crop, the Ripple crop top, I bought that one as well. I also bought the Lydia 2.0, which has the nice little frilling at the bottom. Again, I'll show you in a later video. I also bought the York sweater, the arboreal sweater. I think that was it for the ones I bought back then. And so I just kept knitting, and obviously time went around, I moved, and then Miss Rona came in and messed with a lot of people's lives, and the job I was working, I could work from home. So I did that, and I found myself, when you're at work and you have nothing to do and you I just sat there. I was quite new to the job, and so there would be points where I'd just be doing nothing. I would find myself knitting and watching like knitting YouTube videos and knitting streams, and so I got into that and I got excited by it. Miss Rona messed with my life personally quite a bit, and so I took time away from work to kind of reset and recharge and deal with what was going on in my life. And naturally that meant a lot more knitting time, and so I started streaming my knitting, and then we get to here where I'm on YouTube talking about knitting and showing you how to knit. How many times can I say knitting in one sentence? The time away from work actually helped me a lot mentally, but also with my knitting. I started to understand the dynamics of different stitches a bit more, and so I could understand where I was going wrong in my previous attempts to design some things. And so I now feel like I have quite a solid understanding of knitting, and I feel comfortable in being able to design different concepts that I have in my head. They're obviously going to take a long time. I'm still writing up the pattern for my Ariana Grande dress, so stay tuned for that. I'll get it done at some point, hopefully this week, but I'm not making any promises. But that's where I am now. This is kind of a whistle-stop tour of SmikleGoesKnitting. And so I thought I'd wind down the video with just talking about why I love knitting. And if you're not a knitter, or, you know, if you're watching this podcast just to support me, I don't know why you would be watching it if you don't love knitting. But I thought I'd talk through some reasons why I love knitting. So the first reason, obviously, is that I can create what I like. I can find patterns I like, and I can make them. I'm literally making things, stuff, clothes with my hands, and that's insane to me, and that excites me a lot. And I think it's quite magical in a way. And as I mentioned before, it kind of gives me that flow state of mind where I'm not thinking about everything that's going on in my head, and I can just focus on each individual stitch, and it's quite mindful as an activity. And so I found mental benefits from knitting. Another thing is, I don't know if it's objectively true, but I feel like I have a weird body shape, or like a different body shape. I am someone who, when I started university, I weighed 20 stone, which is like 120 something kilos. And I've lost a lot of weight and maintained that weight loss over the last like 7-ish years. And so I like the fact that I can create clothes that fit me the way I want them to fit me. Like I'm somewhere in between kind of plus size and like typical sizes. And so it's nice to find something, to make something that fits my body in a way that I am comfortable with, because I do have an issue with my body, and I'm working through it, and I'm learning to love my body, and being neutral towards my body. But it's nice to have that space to create what you want, to look how you want to towards the world, so that's nice. And finally, I love how it gives you that little sense of joy that you sometimes lack in adult life, like the gratification of you've done this hard work and you've created this thing from it. Like often in school, you know, you revised hard, you wrote a good essay, and you got an A. Like in adult life, you know, you can work towards a project, then once that project is done, you go on to the next project, and it's just a little, I don't know why I'm doing this with my hands, but it's nice to put in work to something and then see the results of the thing that you've made. And I love that so much because it motivates me and gives me little like checkpoints to keep going, and you know, it kind of gives me a purpose sometimes, you know, when you're having those days where you feel like, oh, what's the point? Knitting. Also, you know, it avoids fast fashion, which is a bonus. Now I thought I'd show you guys what I'm working on at the moment, just to give you a little thing. So one of the projects that I'm working on is a teddy bear for my friend's new nephew. Very exciting. I haven't done everything for the teddy bear. This is also one of my first attempts at knitting non-garments. So this is what he looks like at the moment. I think he looks very adorable. He's only got one ear at the moment. I've knit the other ear, I just need to attach it. Still needs arms and legs, but yeah, this is, I'll put on screen the title of this pattern because I'm not 100% sure, and the download on my PC just says bear. So I'll put in the comments also the pattern and the designer and everything, but this is the little bear that I'm knitting. I'm very, very pleased with how it's coming out because like I said, I'm not a teddy designer or knitter at all, so it's cute. I'm a very big fan. The other big project that I'm working on, which will come to no surprise to those of you who have watched my videos or are going to watch my videos or follow me on Instagram, is the Harry Styles cardigan by JW Anderson. I think it's got a name like the Colour Blockwork cardigan. I've got all of the pieces, all of the panels, so like this is a sleeve and this is a sleeve, this is a front panel, this is another front panel, and this is the back panel. I am so close to finishing it. In my other video I talk about trying to do it in 36 hours. If you want to know if I can achieve that, then check out my video. But I still have to go and do the collar and like the trim at the bottom, the ribbing at the bottom, and the cuffs, and then the buttonhole thingies. So those are the two projects I'm working on at the moment. Once I finish the Harry Styles cardigan, I think I'm going to start... My camera just loves cutting out in the middle of sentences. Once I'm finished with the Harry Styles cardigan, I will be starting a new project. It may take a little bit of design and creating some cabling charts, but I'm going to be doing that next. And also I might start working through the patterns that I've brought and I haven't done yet. I feel like I should be doing that. I also thought I'd tell you guys what book I'm listening to at the moment because I like to listen to audiobooks whilst I knit. It's also another way of kind of getting myself out of my own head and being more mindful in the moment. And so I am currently listening to The Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky. I hope I said that right. It's a kind of sci-fi-ish book and I'm enjoying it so far. I've not got too far into it, but I previously, while knitting other things, have listened to Happy by Darren Brown. That's a book I would definitely recommend to anyone who may be struggling mentally or just wants to listen to Darren Brown's voice or read Darren Brown's writing. He talks and writes in a very similar way. And as a psychology graduate, I have a natural love for anything kind of psychology related, so it's a lot of fun. I would recommend you listening to those too. As I mentioned, I will put all the links to everything I have spoken about in the description. Couldn't think of the word then. So what I'm wearing, the different jumpers, the cardigan that I'm knitting at the moment, the bear. So yeah. Thank you for watching my first ever podcast, guys. It's been a wild ride. Thank you for being here. If you're interested in any of my other ventures, please check out my other videos. And I have an Instagram at SmikleGoesKnitting if you want to see more of an update. I update my stories very regularly so you can see what I'm working on and what I'm doing at the moment. I've mentioned in previous videos that I have a Twitch account. I am not sticking to a schedule anymore, so the best place to try and get me is either here on YouTube or on Instagram. And as I mentioned, I'm going to be finishing up the pattern for the Ariana Grande dress very soon, so that's something to keep your eye out for. If you like this podcast, do give it a like. It's nice to kind of sit down with you guys and just have like a chatty video rather than like a proper curated how-to knit thing. It's nice to just sit and chat. If you're looking forward to seeing how I do on the Harry Styles cardigan and just generally looking forward to more podcasts from me, then subscribe down below. It helps me out a ton. I look forward to hanging out with you guys very soon. Stay wholesome and happy knitting.